Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? I'm Sue, and it's that time of the year yet again. The custom Mystic Summon is upon us, which means it's time for another tier list. In case you're new and don't know, this is your once, maybe twice a year opportunity to get specific Moonlight 5 stars that you normally wouldn't have access to, normally that you want to actually get. So basically, now is the time to pick up whatever character you've had your eyes on. But there are a couple of caveats. Number one, this banner, you cannot summon Ainzul Gon because he's a collab character. You cannot summon Genesis Raz because he's free, everyone already has access to him. And then you cannot summon Disciplinary Prefect Arya, Witch of the Mare Tenebria, and Lady of the Scales. But every other Moonlight 5-star in the game is free, and if it's somebody that you want to pick up, you are free to do so. Now, second thing to talk about is, apparently, according to what people have been telling me, this is apparently a discounted Mystic Summon banner. So instead of the normal 200 Mystics, it's only 120 to get the character that you want. Which means if you have a lot of resources, you might be able to pick up a bunch of different characters off of this thing. So that is pretty good. But the next thing that I want to highlight here is kind of important for everybody, I feel like, whether you've got resources or not. And that is that you probably shouldn't roll this banner right away. Now let me explain. We are going to have this banner for 3 weeks, basically up until Halloween. And we won't know the ML5 star that comes after the custom Mystic Summon until after this banner is over. So somewhere along the line, I want to say like halfway through the custom Mystic Summon, they will preview whatever the next Moonlight 5-star is. So you do not have perfect information on day one or the first week for whether or not it's worth it to roll this banner. So for that reason, I caution everybody to not roll this banner until you are acutely aware of what comes after it. Because a common thing that they do is they end up essentially giving you this custom Mystic banner before releasing that something next level broken that you almost assuredly are going to want to have, at least if you are trying to be serious at all in PvP, which is what Moonlight 5 stars for the large part actually are. So, you know, if you don't really care about PvP, just get the character that you like at the end of the day. But again, please wait, get all the information that you possibly can, especially because the next character after this one is going to basically going from like Halloween, give or take, until like right up till Black Friday. That's usually when like big sales and stuff for the holiday season start to kick off. So yeah, they're going to probably want to try to push a character that's very, very strong after this in order to boost sales because it's the start of the holiday shopping season. Got it? All right, good. Now, as with all of my custom tier list videos, I do include builds for most of the characters when I talk about them. So if you want to see those, use the timestamps down below to jump to any part of the video. Just jump to the character that you want to learn more about. Next up, just as like a disclaimer, this tier list is my opinion, right? I basically fully made this myself. I showed it to a couple of people, but it is pretty much wholly myself that made the tier list. It is, you know, skewed slightly more towards World Arena because that is the content that I do like to play the most. In general, I'm pretty proficient at most areas of the game. I would say like Guild Wars is my weakest thing overall. But I just want to let you know, guys know, I personally prioritize World Arena a bit higher. I prioritize efficient PvE farming strategies a bit higher. So certain characters may appear, you know, higher or lower based on those factors. This list is also largely based on my own experiences as a World Arena player. I am usually around the top 500 rank in World Arena, and I have over a dozen Emperor frames to my name. So just in case you are new and you don't know if the advice I'm giving you is good or bad, you could kind of base it on, you know, my rating, which I kind of hate people judging people entirely on their rating, but some people put so much weight behind that, you know, I feel like I have to throw it out there. Otherwise, you'll inevitably get somebody who posts my tier list somewhere and goes, oh yeah, this guy's a scam, he's a hack, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Fine, that's your opinion. Anyways, lastly, like with all my tier lists, everyone in each tier is alphabetized, right? So just because Boss Arunka here is the first one under must-haves does not mean that she is better than these other two characters. It just means that alphabetically she comes first. So before we jump into it, let's break down the tiers and what they mean. Must-haves is pretty self-explanatory. If you are a serious World Arena player, or a serious PvP player at all, you need these characters. These are the best characters in the game, full stop. And in the case of some of them, I feel like if you don't have them, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to actually play the game unless you adopt like a very specific strategy like Cleave, for example. After that is meta. These are just the commonly picked characters that you're going to see very often, with the exception of one, which is this guy here at the end, which we'll talk a little bit more when we get to him, why he's not necessarily meta. He's kind of in between the two tiers, but I put him here because of various PvE factors. And then after that, we have the meta counterpicks. These are just characters that are not played every game, but they are very strong, right, in the right scenarios. After that, we have strong but hard to use. These are characters that are actually very good. The thing is that a lot of meta matchups kind of box them out and make them very difficult to use in a lot of cases. So, like, they're not necessarily, like, niche per se, but, like, the spots where you could pick them, they are very, very strong, right? They're not meta counterpicks. They're more like off-meta counterpicks that are stronger than the characters in the tier below. After that is niche. These are the characters that, like, you'll use once in a blue moon, or like a specific setup will rise where you can use them, or they might have like a PvE farming niche or something like that. That's what the characters are that appear here in this tier. Bad is after that. These are characters that are honestly quite difficult to use, and like their only real use in a lot of cases that I found in the last like 2 to 3 months is just Trial of the Constellations, and I don't think you really want to spend your Mystic Medals on a character that's only really good in Trial of the Constellations. And then please don't should be self-explanatory. Please do not summon for any of these characters whatsoever, unless like these are just the only characters you're missing, in which case, again, just wait until you see what the next Moonlight 5 stars and just grab that character instead. These characters I think are just absolutely not worth summoning for, and I'm not going to bother talking about them here in the video. This is the one tier where I'm not going to show you any builds for characters because I truly believe they are dreadful and need like either major buffs or complete reworks. Anyways, let's jump into it and start with the character that's probably going to be the most asked about, most talked about character in the entire Mystic Summon, custom Mystic Summon thing here, and that is going to be Boss Arunka. Boss Arunka is the tankiest character in the game. Thanks to her passive Vanguard of the Silent Expanse, players can only target her with single target attacks as long as she is the front row character. She is a major roadblock that many characters in the game simply cannot deal with. As long as you have her on your team, your opponent has to get very creative in order to kill you. This usually makes their drafts pretty predictable, and you can punish accordingly. On top of that, her kit comes with a ton of free combat readiness, defense breaks, buff strips, and a soul burn that guarantees a dual attack with your best character. This lets her be a great role player as well in your team's overall offense. The meta build for the character is going to be on counter set with the artifact Moas, but my preference is for the character to be significantly harder to kill. My logic is as long as Arunka is alive, they can never actually get to my carries, which allows for some very easy wins. After that, we come to Empyrean Ilynav, and there's a reason that I put her on the thumbnail, because right now, I simply don't know how turn 2 players play the game without her. Her passive Dragon's Pride reduces penetration damage by 30%. In 2025, most of Epic 7's best damage dealers have penetration in their kit and have more than enough damage to just completely rip through your entire team in the blink of an eye. Ilynav is the one character that you can play reliably in the entire game that will act as a floodgate and slow down your opponent's offense. Many games between turn 2 players are going to revolve around who can take Ilynav or who can play around Ilynav. She simply is that important. On top of that, insane passive, she also has a ton of other amazing things in her kit. She has built-in lifesteal, built-in injury, free combat readiness, a cleanse for your team, undispellable defense and effect resistance buff. And that's before I mention that she is the second tankiest character in the entire game. The meta build for this character right now is going to be as a main tank on protection set, but you could absolutely lean into a hybrid damage dealer build as well if you wanted to do both the tanking role as well as kind of be a off DPS. And lastly, in the must-haves tier, we have Maid Chloe, who is the clear winner of the previous balance patch. Maid Chloe is just the best support in the game right now that is not named the Lady of the Scales. Maid Chloe's passive Mage Cheer not only heals your team each turn, but also reduces fixed damage by 50%, which is pretty massive. You're not going to have to worry about things like Uberia's Tooth on Lone Wolf Peyra, Renak and her skill 3, New Moon Luna and her skill 2, Twisted Eidolon Charon's ultimate, and so much more because of this passive. On top of that, her ultimate VIP treatment is a team-wide cleanse that also gives a re-raise buff and defense buff, which is going to make your team incredibly hard to kill. The skill also revives fallen allies. It's basically the perfect support skill when you think about it. Her basic attack can also stun and is a potential team-wide CR push. Factor in her soul burn, and she can not only give your team a lot of healing and combat readiness, but also cycle back into her skill 3 for more cleanses, more buffs, and more revives, making her incredibly difficult to deal with for some players. Her build path is also very flexible. You could play her slow on the counter set, mid-speed with high effect resistance, or very fast as an anchor in your aggressive drafts. She's also a really solid safety net in PvE for brand new players. Next up, let's talk about the meta characters. These are the ones you're going to be seeing pretty much all the time everywhere, but they're just not as good as the must-haves for some reason or another. So let's start with my girl Belian. And before I talk about what makes her great, I have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Artifact 3F. If you don't have this limited artifact from the Overlord collab, the character is going to become a lot worse. Honestly, I'd consider her niche tier in that case. Hopefully, it gets a rerun at some point very, very soon. I'm hoping for this year in particular. Anyways, let's talk about Belian proper. Her on 3F is pretty much the perfect anti-aggression DPS. Her defining trait is her passive, Shackles of Suppression, which forbids your opponent from gaining any souls, effectively turning off the soul burn mechanic for them and totally hosing specific characters such as Freeran. On top of that, she's incredibly tanky and also the fastest non-specialty changed knight to boot. Also, all of her attacks are AoE with various different debuffs like Slow, Blind, and Provoke. As for how you build her, her primary build in this meta is going to be on counter set with 3F, but she does have other builds, too numerous for me to mention here in this video. If you want to know her second best build though, it is on protection set with the artifact Aureus, making her functioning as your main tank, and you're basically just picking her for that passive to deny souls. After Belian, we come to the character that has been the bedrock of my PvP team comps for many years, and that is Conqueror Lilias. And I am happy to say the queen is back. Conqueror Lilias is, in my opinion, the best aggro opener in Epic 7 at the moment, thanks to her most recent round of buffs. If you are new and have not chosen from your Fallen Land Moonlight Blessing yet, this is the character to take. Conqueror Lilias is literally the Swiss Army knife support. She strips enemy buffs, provides your enemy with a mini attack and defense buff that can't be dispelled, has a guaranteed dual attack on her S1, and also has some barriers to boot. And she does all of this while being blazing fast and reasonably tanky. With her changes, she now also gives combat readiness pushes to her team when you activate her skill 3 For Honor, and her skill 2 Cover has changed to have a defense break in it. That defense break, that is why she is here under this tier. In the past, players could choose characters like Lionheart Sirmia to punish an early Conqueror Lilias pick because, well, you'd eventually have to dual attack and then Sirmia would feast on you. But now, well, you just use For Honor, strip Sirmia's immunity, and then use Cover to defense breaker, and that's just going to set her up for a layup to kill her in one hit. Defense break is the most powerful debuff in all of Epic 7 as of the recording of this video, and having someone that is this fast and this tanky be able to set up an insta-kill on most of the cast is absolutely disgusting in my opinion. Building her is really straightforward. Just slap as much speed and bulk on her as you can, and some effectiveness so that way she can guarantee her defense break, and toss her on the Sweet Miracle artifact so she's immune to debuffs, and you're pretty much good to go. After Lilias, we come to Fallen Cecilia, who is the second best tank in the game in my opinion, behind Empyrean Ilynav. While she doesn't mitigate penetration damage, she does reduce fixed damage like Maid Chloe by 50%, and also gives your team a huge barrier to start, as well as a barrier on an ally at the end of each of her turns. Her skill 3 Spear of Resentment gives your team a skill nullifier, passes any debuffs on Cecilia back to the enemy team, and also strips enemy buffs. She's pretty straightforward to build. You just throw her on speed set with some good bulk and maybe some effect resistance and you're good to go. There's not really much else to say about the character. If you need a good tank and you already have Ilynav, then you grab Cecilia. After Cecilia, we come to my girl, New Moon Luna. She is perhaps my favorite Moonlight 5-star in the game to play. New Moon Luna is a bruiser slash debuffer hybrid character that could strip enemy buffs and also, most importantly, seal all enemy passives. She's the fastest and tankiest mage in the entire game, and her skill 2 Demon Sealing Spear is a single target defense break that also does AoE fixed damage to the enemy team. With the release of Maid Chloe, it's much harder though to use Luna than it has been in the past as an early pick. There are multiple ways to play around fixed damage now, cleansers are super powerful in the current meta, and you still have bad matchups like Bystander Huayang and potentially Harseti if you pick the character too early. Still, she is insanely powerful, just as strong as she's always been. It's just gotta be in the right spots. If you pick her in the right spot, she's going to completely trivialize the matchup and win you a lot of games in all forms of PvP. Luna has 2 main build paths, as fast as you could go on speed immunity with Tagahel's Ancient Book, or the way I play her, which is also on speed immunity but much slower with way more HP and on the Etika Scepter artifact to maximize the Demon Sealing Spear's DPS output. Next up is Ruele of Light, who is my favorite Soul Weaver in Epic 7, largely because I was a die-hard White Mage player in Final Fantasy XI for so many years, and her design very much reminds me of my character from that game. Ruele is basically a safety net in PvP by offering powerful single-target heals and cleanses, limiting the damage certain allies can take, and also being able to revive a fallen ally to 100% health with 1 turn of invincibility to boot. In the past, the way that you would deal with Ruele was to put her in situations where she needs to choose between healing herself or reviving an ally. Her last round of buffs gave her a guaranteed one-time revive if you killed her, making it hard for aggressive teams to deal with her, but general use teams still didn't have too much of an issue. Now with her exclusive equipment, she could heal and revive herself and allies at the same time. Being the tankiest Soul Weaver in the game, Ruele isn't just someone you can play into aggro only anymore. She's strong enough to be a general use Soul Weaver for almost any form of content in all of Epic 7. She hasn't been this close to top tier since 2019. Building Ruele is pretty easy, especially if you're a new player, as the reversal set is the best in slot option and generally rolls incredibly well. If you don't have the gear as a veteran, try speed set instead. Her artifact choices are also incredibly numerous, but I've been personally running Prophetic Candlestick as it feels almost criminal when combined with her new exclusive equipment. After Ruele of Light, who is one of my favorite ML5s in the game, we come to one of my least favorite ever in Spirit Eye Celine. Spirit Eye Celine is a reviver like Maid Chloe, but is also blazing fast and a amazing single target DPS that is very hard to kill thanks to her passive Sixth Sense. That passive, by the way, is why I hate this character. She is so frustrating to play against. Her gameplay loop is basically to use her skill 3, Burning Possession, to revive all of her allies and also gain a 100% chance to counter all critical hits that come her way, which she then lifesteals above 50% health, so that way she can't die again due to that passive. Basically, if you don't have a DPS that kills with non-critical strikes, you can never kill the character. Considering how hard this character hits, you just use the free soul burn to rip through nearly any carry in the game right away and win the match before it ever even starts. In my opinion, Celine is a top 5 damage dealer in the current state of the game, and someone that I think your opponents will have a really hard time dealing with unless they have a specific answer like Belian on 3F. As for how you build her, it's usually going to be as fast as you can with as much damage as you can so you can eliminate characters right off the bat. Using Argent Wave Huayang's artifact, Summer Photogenic, also makes her incredibly powerful versus Lady of the Scales and various other tanks on the artifact Aureus. And lastly on this tier, we come to Straze, who is a glass cannon AoE DPS that could delete the enemy's highest health hero in a flash with his skill 3 Star Extinction. With his new exclusive equipment, he gets an extra turn if Star Extinction secures a kill, allowing him to follow up with his skill 2 Destructive Gaze, which does more damage if someone on the enemy team is dead. This makes him an incredible cleave DPS with heroes like Ahmed or even Lady of the Scales. And while he's powerful for sure, it's not enough for me to say that he's someone that gets played every game, and so thus he wouldn't normally qualify for the meta tier. The main reason why I have him under meta is that he is by far the best character in the game, I feel, for speed farming hunts. I even made a guide showcasing how to farm with him at warp speed and all the otherworldly hunts, which you can find here on the channel. So if you're somebody with a lot of leaves to burn, he's an amazing character to get a lot of gear very, very quickly. His build for PvP is pretty straightforward. Speed torrent with as much speed and damage as you can get. And for PvE, it's kind of like the opposite. It's rage torrent with no speed at all and as much damage as you can get. Now let's move on to the meta counter picks. These are the characters that you'll likely see on pick 3 or later in World Arena, and generally have holes in their game plan that the first 2 tiers might not necessarily have. The time spent that I take on each character in the descriptions from this point on in the video is going to be a bit faster in order to keep the length of the video shorter, because statistically, I find most viewers just take the things that are in the first 2 tiers, and everything that's kind of below this, it's like, you're just looking for one reason or another to understand, like, hey, should I take this? Is this character still good? What's the one thing about it that makes them still worth considering? So again, that's why it's shorter. Anyways, let's get started with Abyssal Yufine. Yufine is primarily played for her passive Inner Abyss, which reduces the enemy combat range by 50%, which slows down a lot of aggressive team compositions, long enough for her team to win the game. She's a competent AoE DPS that can carry any game when built properly. She's just an overall solid character. Next up, we come to Bystander Huayong. Bystander Huayong is the hardest character currently to build in Epic 7, so please do not choose her unless you have incredibly good gear that's similar to what you see here on your screen. It doesn't need to be exactly my build, but you should be somewhere in the ballpark on these stat numbers. Bystander Huayong is a powerful single target DPS that excels against light-based enemies and is also completely immune to all debuffs. Considering the meta is just light-based heroes and debuffers, guess who's a premium counterpick in PvP at the moment? After that, we come to Harseti. And Harseti is a very complicated character for me to go over very quickly, but in short, Harseti nullifies the speed stat on both players' teams, ensuring the turn order is random, except for the fact that Harseti will take the very first turn. Since she's guaranteed to take the first turn unless she's against Xiao, you can use her to completely shut down fast players altogether and win specific PvP fights without much issue. She is the tankiest mage in the game and also an AoE DPS to boot. You have the ability to play her pure damage or pure control with an artifact like Abyssal Crown. Harseti, in my opinion, used to be a lot better than she is now because Smilegate introduced a lot of counterplay, thus making her weaker. But I do think she's still really good. She's one of the best Guild War offense units in the game in my limited experience, and she will always have a place, I feel like, in every PvP game mode if you can pick her in the right spot. After Harseti, we come to my favorite character in the game in Lionheart Sirmia. She is an AoE DPS that punishes counterattacks, dual attacks, and extra attacks by spamming her ultimate skill, I Am the Victor. If you see counter characters like Setsuka, you could just slam Lionheart Sirmia and accrue a ton of free damage and value. She's a very fun and satisfying character to play, just make sure you build her with immunity. After Lionheart Sirmia, we come to Lone Wolf Peyra, who is a Swiss Army knife aggro opener, much like Conqueror, and I'm sure her placement being this low on the tier list is going to raise some eyebrows, so please let me explain. Lone Wolf Peyra pretty much has run things for the last 6 months, but the format we're currently in really doesn't do her any favors. For starters, Maid, Chloe, and Fallen Cecilia are played pretty much every game, which makes her damage completely tank. Everyone is on high effect resistance with immunity because of how powerful the debuffers currently are, meaning there's no way for her to really reliably land an early defense break. On top of that, with Setsuka being meta, everyone is laser focused on countering evasion units, which she also is. Lilias doesn't have a lot of these problems, and she can sidestep other ones like getting rid of the immunity that characters have with her skill 3-4 honor. And she's still able to do this while also being a CR pusher for the team that generates offensive value. Pretty much Peyra's only value right now over Conqueror Lilias is that the skill 3 is a cleanse, and it provides things like swift attack and rampage. If you're not leading into the swift attack and rampage, or you don't need the cleanse, then Lilias is going to usually be the better option. Peyra is a very strong character, she's just not top tier anymore, at least in my opinion. And finally, in this tier, we come to Twisted Eidolon Charon, who is pretty much here for one reason and one reason only, and that is his ultimate skill, Sword of Requiem. It is an AoE attack that does 15,000 fixed damage and can never miss. So, you just draft Charon whenever you see dodge units like Setsuka, or units that die to fixed damage like Freerin or Spirit Eye Celine, and then you just sit back, protect him until his ultimate charges, then use it to instantly win the fight. That's it. If you have crazy good gear, feel free to play him as an AoE DPS on lifesteal with high effect resistance, but for everyone else, his defense is pretty poor, so just stack as much HP as you possibly can on him and hope that he survives. Next up, we move on to the strong but niche tier. These are good counter picks, but they come up far less often than the previous characters. Let's start with Blood Moon Haste. Blood Moon Haste is a safety net character versus aggressive compositions. He's very tanky, and if the enemy doesn't kill him first, his passive Grudge gives your team a barrier and supercharges his skill 3 Moonslash. If Moonslash kills, it revives the whole team. He's here because he's easy to control and doesn't perform well compared to the other revivers in the format at the moment. Next up, we have Briar Witch Asaria, who is a DPS who can strip all buffs from the enemy team and also defense break all enemies. That's great, but what really makes her land here is because she has bonus accuracy versus dodge-based teams like Setsuka, and her passive also forbids both teams from reviving allies, making her great versus Maid Chloe and Ruele of Light. Next, we come to Judge Kisei, who is an extremely powerful AoE DPS that can run over teams in a flash with proper setup. Just use her skill 2, End of Evil, to defense break the entire enemy team, then use Wave of Light to finish off the job. Next up is Last Rider Crow, who is the tank that you want to be taking whenever you fight an AoE heavy team composition, such as Harsetti, Belian, or Freerin. With the artifact Crown of Glory, he completely destroys Freerin, by the way, at least if you can survive her initial S3. After that, we come to Little Queen Charlotte, and post-buff, Little Queen Charlotte is actually a beast, at least on paper. She reduces all damage that your team takes from all sources by 20% with her new version of a Queen's Dignity, and that's actually incredible. The issue is that it's really hard to find a spot to use her, which is why she lands here. If you use her versus slow teams, you're probably playing her into Boss Arunka, which she can't put a dent into, Ilynav, which completely tanks her damage, or Hua Young, who probably instantly kills her. And if you're playing versus fast teams, they have enough firepower to kill pretty much even the tankiest characters in the game in the blink of an eye. I'm not willing to say that Little Queen Charlotte is worse than the characters in Niche, because she's certainly stronger than those characters. She could absolutely beat those characters, but I feel like she's going to find herself there unless the meta shifts in the next few months. After Charlotte, we come to Mediator Quirk, who is a solid supporter who is immune to debuffs and can cleanse your entire team, and his exclusive equipment actually gives him the ability to close out games with his enhanced S2. In the current state of the game, I think if you need a tempo cleanser, he is the better option than Laya in most cases, and may be more impactful than someone like Lone Wolf Peyra, depending on which characters your opponent has. After that, we come to Operator Sigret, whose new exclusive equipment breathes a lot of life into her for aggro players who are looking for a bridge that can run over barrier tanks. Considering Protection Set is basically mandatory for turn 2 players to survive with how insane the damage currently is in the game, Sigret should have no shortage of targets. The issue with her is, as always, that she's very fragile, so if you get outsped, or, heaven forbid, her S2 gets countered when it doesn't kill, she may die before she has any game impact. That said, she's still reasonably good, which is why she lands here. After Sigret, we come to Sage Ball and Cezanne, who is an anti-aggro character who constantly gains combat race and threatens to sleep the enemy team with his skill 2. With his changes a few months back, I don't really like his ability to speed contest as much. For example, I find I usually lose games against characters like Ahmed, but I do like him for his ability to kind of slow down aggressive teams, much like Abyssal Yufine would. You basically kind of threaten the sleep, and if you actually get a turn, you soul burn him, and then hopefully can pick off a squishy target with his skill 3 and flip the game in your favor. After Sage Balance is on, we come to C Phantom Politis, who is another aggressive opener who is permanently stealth, which is a bonus. That said, I don't like her nearly as much as Conqueror Lilias or Lone Wolf Pera, but her passive does reduce resources like Fighting Spirit and Focus, which makes her sometimes the play if I need to stop certain characters from performing well, such as Afternoon Soak Flan. After C Phantom Politis, we come to Urban Shadow Shu, and Shu is basically the injury character in this format. Her primary use is to stop Genesis Raz in his tracks. Just one turn from her and a powerful S3 later to his face will kill a huge chunk of his overall damage. Using her to deal with all health scaling characters will still work, but the thing is, they most likely are going to have either Cecilia or Maid Chloe, and that's going to tank all of your damage and make her a lot less effective. And then finally, we have Zio here in this tier. And I know that's going to probably be pretty crazy. I usually rate Zio very high, and he's one of the most pre-banned characters in the game. So I think him being this low will surprise some of you, but please let me explain. Right now, I think if you want to secure turn 1, Harsetti is just the far better character. She's far tankier, and I feel like she has a better matchup spread than Zio. There's going to be a lot of teams that Zio just isn't really effective into, and a lot of his aggro pivot combos, while still good, aren't nearly as strong as they used to be. He's always going to hold value because he has the essentially I have turn 1 button, but unless you have a concrete game plan with him to just explode the opponent's entire team right off the rip, I don't really think he's that good. And to wrap up the video, I'll quickly go through the niche characters, as the characters that are bad, they're primarily played for their PvE usage, like Trial of the Constellations, or they just have like a random oddball matchup or synergy, like Ambitious Tywin versus Harsetti, or like Renak plus Dragon King Sharoon. And I just find that those things are just not really consistent. They're not really worth using a Mystic, summon selector on, right? For example, Dragon King Sharoon, you need Renak for that to be good. No good player's ever giving you that in World Arena. Everyone's figured out how to beat it on defense, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. So that's kind of bad. And then your matchup versus Death Dealer Ray, it's not good either. It hasn't really been. It's always been like 55-45 Sharoon. Do you really want to use a Mystic on that? Doesn't feel very good. So yeah, that's why I'm not really going to cover them. It's just not really worth it. And again, that's to say nothing of the please don't characters. I think all of those characters are just truly horrible everywhere. Like they're just not playable at all in anything. And yes, that includes Lone Crescent Bologna, because after Nightmare Labyrinth left, I just don't know what you're supposed to do with her. I literally keep reducing her point value in my ratio lobbies. She's at 1 point right now, and she still sees 0 play, which means that players would rather play something like Red Mercedes over her. So yeah, again, not really that good. Anyways, let's wrap this up now. On to the niche characters, and this is basically where everything needs to line up perfectly in order to get them to work, or you just have to know that it works in this one specific situation, and that's it. So let's start things off with Arbiter Vildred. He is a high-powered AoE DPS that's great for farming adventure, or if your opponent is just all squishy cleave characters that just don't have immortality, or don't gain invincibility on their skills, or don't have supports that give them skill nullifiers, or don't have supports that give them re-raise. Yeah, you see what I mean? It doesn't really feel like it's going to happen most of the time. After that, we come to Archdemon Shadow, and I just feel like Luna is the better Seal character. She's just not good versus most turn 2 drafts, because they just have cleansers and revivers, and they can just get out of the Seal very easily, and she's too slow, I feel like, really to make an impact against faster game plans. And that's to say nothing of the fact that everyone just starts the game on immunity, so her first turn usually doesn't really feel that great. She's not bad, just really, really hard to use. Next is Death Dealer Ray, and it's a cleanser and an effect resistance meta, and several DPS are just immune to him entirely. He's a great last pick in World Arena, but only when you're absolutely sure it's lights out, which is why he falls all the way down here. Next we have Desert Jewel Basar. And I feel like Lady of the Scales is just infinitely better than him in almost every single scenario, and almost every other Soul Weaver that's playable provides more than he does. You're basically choosing him largely for barrier inversion, and then after you use it, you have a limited window to close out the game, or he just falls off compared to all of your other options. It's almost like he's a cleave character, but cleave doesn't really use him, so he's in a really weird spot. After that, we come to Designer Lilibet. If your opponent's team is all debuffers, Designer Lilibet is pretty much the go-to DPS since she can't really be locked down. But other than that one scenario, there's not really a reason to choose her over any other cleansers. Next, we come to Dragon Bride Senya, and cleavers I feel like have long since figured out how to play around this character, and for the turn 2 grindy matchups, they can just kill the backslot character because either A, they have penetration resistance from Empyrean Ilynav, DN, or the Warfare rules this current season, or B, Senya just doesn't do enough damage to kill their Ruele of Light, or their Maid Chloe, or they can't do anything because you have Lady of the Scales with damage share. And that's why she lands here. You basically have to choose her when you know that she is strong. Next up is Eternal Wanderer Ludwig, and I feel like Cleave is a bit worse now than it was last season with a lot of the new changes. And Ludwig, I feel like, is a lot weaker of a Cleave option than somebody like, say, Kisei or Straze. And this also ties into Zio being how he is, right? I feel like he's weaker, so as a result, all of the things that pair well with him, like Ludwig, are weaker. I still love this character for Guild Wars, but for Arena and RTA, it feels really rough and hard to recommend. Next up, we come to Hellion Lua, who is a 2-buff stripper in a format where everyone has 3+ buffs because they're buff stacking, runs a ton of cleansers, has a ton of ER, and is usually trying to forbid you from soul burning with something like Belian or Disciplinary Prefect Arya. Doesn't really sound like a recipe for success, does it? That's why Lua's here. Next up, we come to Navy Captain Landy, and oh, how the mighty have fallen. Her value is for her buff stacking because she gives critical hit resistance at the start. You choose her with a protection set knight and put your whole team on immunity to deal with specific debuffers like the aforementioned Hellion Lua. Either that or you just use her as a DPS versus control since she can't sleep or stun her. But at that point, wouldn't Little Queen Charlotte just be better? Next, we come to Pirate Captain Flan. Pretty much everything I have to say about Flan, I said with Zio and Ludwig, and I'll say it again when we talk about Silverblade Araminta. She's a cleave/control character that combos with specific openers like Zio. But those combos are a lot worse now than they were now that everyone is playing things like Arunka. Everyone is super tanky. Everything is immune to debuffs like Genesis Raz. Or they're just drafting cleansers like Maid Chloe and Lady of the Scales every single game. Next up is Requiem Rwana, and her usefulness depends on you going first. And for some players, that's easy. But sometimes resetting cooldowns for just one turn isn't enough to close out games. Teams are very tanky in this meta, so if you're not packing characters that could just run down the enemy team, you're probably going to lose. I like her for Guild Wars, but not really for World Arena at the moment. After that, we come to Silverblade Araminta, and I'll be real with you, I think Silverblade is very strong in the matchups where you have a dedicated stripper and they have no cleansers. Her effectiveness is usually high enough to tag a lot of people, even if they have crazy high effect resistance, like 300+. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, is why would I play her over Red Araminta if I already have turn 1 secured? Red Araminta has a built-in strip, which circumvents Silverblade's biggest weakness and allows you to get the Warfare rules enhanced burns and still also have a stun to control the enemy team. That was the big reason why I put Silverblade here instead of one tier higher. After that, we come to Solitary of the Snow. Does your opponent use Focus? You draft Solitaria. And even then, it doesn't always work out. Honestly, I think the character's really bad outside of her passive. After Solitaria, we come to Successor Taeyou, who's probably the hardest hitting single target DPS in the game. The issue with him is that he needs a combat raised pushback character to function. Basically meaning you have to play him with characters like C Phantom Politis or Zio. Look at where I put those two characters on my tier list. Now hopefully you understand why Taeyou is as low as he is. Even if I think he's crazy strong. He's just way too hard to use properly at the moment. If we get one or two more good enablers for him or somebody figures something out, then his value is going to skyrocket. And finally, to wrap up the video is Sylvan Sage Vivian. And I just gotta say, her not being immune to debuffs full time like Bystander Huang is so incredibly frustrating. I just don't understand why it's tied to focus. You basically can't draft her into debuffers at all because they just love tap the character to lower her focus to 3, and then your counter pick just becomes totally worthless. They just control her like they do any other character. And that's to say nothing of the fact that your opponent could just take C Phantom Politis or Solitaria, and you just basically die instantly to anything under the whole sun. I love this character for Arena and Guild Wars, but man, Vivian for World Arena is suffering. And those are pretty much my thoughts on everything on this custom Mystic Summon tier list. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them down below. And remember, this tier list is my opinion. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. At the end of the day, you should take the character that gives you the most enjoyment. If you want to play for whatever reason Apocalypse Robbie, if that's your waifu and you want to take the character, do not let me stop you. Epic 7 is a game played for fun, first and foremost. Have fun, play the characters that you want to play. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later now.